Welcome to Chew the Chat Podcast.
Yeah, Thailand was the point when Lost Souls kind of just put my phone on fucking whatever it is. Airplane.
Do not disturb.
Yeah, when
Mine's always on do not disturb.
that's a good move.
That's why it probably kept cutting off earlier when you was trying to ring me.
When we called Lost Souls, kind of the end of the road. That was when I decided to go to Thailand, and I thought, that was kind of it. That was the realisation at like 32.
32.
I was 32 at the time, yeah. So it was like 7 or 8 years into that band, and we'd been close. We had some good stuff happen, and we were close to a couple of things actually. Like, fucking hell, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. And by the end of that
just
band,
so like that.
Yeah,
It's like a build up and just a letdown, isn't it?
And at that point of like where we'd had the Universal thing, and then we had the RNS thing, it was like we were so close, and I always knew we were good enough.
Yeah,
I was absolutely confident that band in particular was good enough.
Yeah,
but the timing, it just didn't work.
I think it's just frustrating because if you see other people out there doing similar to what you're doing, and you know that yours is better, but some things aren't meant to be, are they?
Well, like I alluded to you on the phone the other day, when I got back into doing Adrenochrome, like, it was just so weird realising how much it's changed. Like, we missed the boat in Lost Souls because we were putting stuff out, but we didn't actually release it. We were just putting videos up on YouTube. We didn't actually put it, which you could do back then. Whereas now it's like everything's on Spotify. Everyone can just release straight away and just put it straight out. And so none of our stuff's actually in a place like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, when it was like we'd missed out a bit, I thought, 32, first boy's on his way. I thought, I reckon that's it. I think I'm just going to be a bedroom fucking musician now. And then it dawned on me, I'm a fucking builder. It really did. And I said to my wife, I just fucking,
just realised,
if this is it for another 30 years.
No, I think if you've got a few bows to your arrow, I think it's good to, you just keep changing, because I go backwards and forwards. One minute everything's into music, next minute I'm all into my well-being. Mm-hmm. And I'm in and out of both of them. And I think it's good to have that. Yeah. It just, if you enjoy it, and because you did well as soon as you come back and realised you had that business set up, it was like, wow.
Yeah, well, that
take you long.
That kind of happened by accident because, are we rolling? Yeah. Excellent. When I came back, the plan was I was talking, because I was only gone for a year. It didn't seem like a long time, but it was such a pivotal time in my life because I'd just become a dad. The boy was 8 months old.
Yeah.
We were pregnant with the second one. As I just said, jokingly but kind of truthfully, like in my mind, from 16 leaving school and getting a job, going to art college and getting a job as a part-time roofer, but being full on in my band, and like I've always been the kind of like, that's what's going to happen. Before music, it was like, I'm going to be a footballer. Yeah. Well, you need a plan B though. Well, I'm going to be a rock star. Yeah. But yeah, it just dawned on me. But when I got back, I was just so down with the building thing. I rang Tommy and I said, Tommy, look what I'm going to do. I need to do something. He said, why don't you come and teach here? And I said, I don't even know any chords. He says, no, you dafty. He said, songwriting, performance, marketing. Yeah. You've travelled, you've toured the country, you've been doing this for 20 years. You're a songwriter. Yeah. He said, yes, you'd have to do some basic teacher training. Yeah. He said, but you could get through that. And he said, and with your attitude, I'm sure if you enjoyed it, you'd get stuck in, and you could probably be a tutor within 4 or 5 years.
Did you do it or?
I started it. Yeah, I started the process. Didn't actually go in and stop, but I started the process. Obviously, the process was, and the timing didn't work out amazing for us because we got back in September. Yeah. And obviously, the school term starts, and for me to get, without fucking boring you, like I'd kept my house, but I'd sold everything, and obviously got 2 kids, and realised when I did the sums that I could do like 2 days of like building, and then I'd be shadowing in there like 3 days, and like it would take certainly a year to get to a point of a full-time position where I could get enough money to, cover my situation. And I just looked around and thought, Jesus, we ain't got anything, and then an opportunity came where a lad said, do you want to help me building? And it was like good money sort of there and then. And ironically, the building was completely different to what I'd done before, because I was on commercial, big stuff, you know, like NASA it is these days. You've got to have a ticket for everything, this pair of gloves for that. And that was horrible, because your soul gets taken out, you know, as well as it all costs you money to do all that stuff, which no one's compensating you for in the prices. Whereas this time, when my friend asked me, can you give us a hand? It was like, yeah, okay, cool. And we were in like jobs like you might want doing, which is like in your house, and we turn up at 8 o'clock and you drop brew lads, and oh, she's really cool, she does yoga,
it's just
and
nice,
and you're with people and humans, and then when we finish it, you come in, you're like, oh wow, thanks so much, I love it. You don't get that when you're doing 300 homes for Lindham's. You just get, come on lads, yes, I need you in on Saturday, this ain't good enough. And that's not the way to spend, or for me.
I've just had some work done on my house, and the guys that come round, there was my age actually, and we was talking about the rave days and everything, because they was born the same kind of time as me. It was just great to chat with them. It was really down to earth, and it's probably the same as what you say. You like it when you when you get that.
I've met some really cool people in my day job, that listen to this podcast. That a couple of them potentially going to be on it. But I'm going to introduce you. You're Lynsey Clayton.
I am.
You are, as you mentioned a minute ago, you're kind of jack of all trades at the moment.
There's a lot of things going on,
But I'm really interested to find out how everything sort of pivoted for you and how your journey sort of came along. And because at the moment would you say you're fundamentally music, or is it the yoga and the well-being, or what would you say is the...
Both, because I left the corporate world. I was part-time in the corporate world until 2 years ago. And then I left to do the music and the well-being. So weekends are just full of performing. And then in the week, it's my yoga classes.
Amazing.
And one-to-ones. But I've got a lot involved in the well-being as well. So it's the yoga, it's the nutrition. Got quite a lot of things going on there as well.
Yeah. Well,
Reiki.
I'm
up to the Reiki master teacher with the Reiki, and
amazing.
so it's whoever comes to me wanting the Reiki yoga, that's what I do.
So you mentioned a minute ago chatting about the raving days. So let's take it back and let's sort of paint a picture of how what's your evolution, Lynsey? Because I remember from being out and about, and obviously in the music scene, and we used to rehearse in the same building, and we were all got friends in a couple of bands, weren't we? And I kind of saw you start to really get into music, and you were teaching yourself, and you were really embracing and taking it on, and got into songwriting and everything. But I remember years before, you were kind of a distant sort of one of the older ladies in the city that I would be like too shy to speak to and stuff. So what was it like? You started, you were out and about once upon a time, raving and partying, and
I've always been quite wild anyway, even before the rave days. So the rave days really for me started when I was about 15, and they lasted probably about 15 years. But no, there was fantastic. So I've always been into music, always been into health. But then the rave days were a bit kind of...
it's difficult to juggle everything, isn't it, when you're in full party mode?
Yeah, sometimes I think I'm very lucky to feel and be the way I am after all that. But yeah, it got to really the end of the 90s really, and I'd had my son, and just wanted a kind of different life. The downers got more than the uppers. Mental health, anxiety, depression, kind of just looking for something else really. I was a big Madonna fan, still a big Madonna fan, and she did yoga. So Cam, just after Cam was born, I found myself a yoga teacher, and I was hooked straight away. First class. The euphoria and the relaxation was just absolutely unreal. And eventually the yoga, that got me away from the rave scene and
that lifestyle.
I didn't realise at the time, but now looking back, I realised that was the beginning of my journey. It was amazing. I had some great teachers I found. They was Canadian. Unfortunately, they went back to America just about 3 months after I started with them. So I couldn't find another teacher like them in Lincoln. You're talking 20 years ago. Wow. There was only like British wheel teachers.
Okay.
So I was searching, couldn't find one. I bought books, started practicing on my own. Looking back now, though, the things I was trying to do, I could have brain managed.
You're going in advance.
So be careful if you've not been to a class and you're working out of a book. Be careful. So I thought to myself, because I couldn't find a teacher, I thought I may as well teach myself. So I did come across one lady. There was something in her teaching that I liked, but it still wasn't the right thing for me. So I asked her who taught her, and she'd been on this course where there was a fit pro and a yogi who had come together to create a course. So I got their details, contacted them, spoke to the yogi, and completely went with the yogi. Alwyn, she's in her 70s now, and we're still really good friends.
Oh, that's lovely.
And she's trained me all the way through. She's taught me everything she knows, and
cool.
yeah, she's absolutely amazing. Yeah, and the first course I actually went on with her, she had this box of books in the corner of the studio, and it happened to be Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now.
The Power of Now, powerful
Yeah, so
book.
this is like 20 years
Really?
ago. And I bought one of the books, and it was mind-blowing. It was like, I could have gone into the high street and kind of waved the book around. It was that kind of feel.
Yeah, God, yeah.
So, yeah, from then, it was just growth and growth and growth. It's just amazing.
So that's obviously in you. That's in you anyway, because I didn't have a dissimilar feeling to that, And I think that thing you talk of when you're in the rave world, the party world, there's so many things kind of conspiring at the same time, because you're young when you enter and they've just been given the keys to the world and everything's exciting, and the neon lights and the madness and the adrenaline, and especially in the 90s, you were there for that pivotal change, probably the biggest
it was the
musical
beginning. I was
cultural
there at the
change.
beginning of it.
From the 60s, really.
Yeah.
It feels like, anyway. But there is those stages that you go through when you do sort of get, maybe you go in like you were 15, I was probably 16, 17, and you maybe get into 22, 23, and you've got a good 4 or 5 years of, and you're sort of, you're still enjoying it, but you're kind of aware of it, and maybe you've got a better job, or maybe you just relationships are getting more, things start happening, people have babies, and and you start to kind of, but it's such a strong thing when you're part of it. I felt like there was a long period where I kind of knew I was done, but I kind of took a long time to get away from it.
It just felt like everything became the same old. You listened to the same conversations, doing the same thing.
Yes.
It just got boring.
Yeah.
And I felt damaged, from it. So I kind of went from one extreme to the other quite quickly.
Well, you're so lucky that because
I think I'm very lucky, yeah.
Well, I've got a little kind of a personal feeling. I have a strong feeling from my experience from people around me, where I think a lot of people feel like that, but can't quite muster or don't have the luck that maybe the book at the right time, or maybe the person who comes into their life, or a relationship that blossoms, or something. And I think a lot of people do feel like they get trapped there, and then that's a really difficult thing if you're not lucky enough to get that spark to.
Yeah, and I think it's just having that strength, and I think it's I kept thinking to myself, it's yoga that did it, I know that now. It hit something and that just grew, but at the time I was just thinking, I just need something to stop me going out at the weekend because that was it. Every time I went out, and it can get quite lonely because you have to come away from your friends as well, you see.
No one wants to go home, do they? And then you end up being 2 days in, and then it gets worse, because when you eventually are in the taxi on the way home, just
it's like, oh, here we go again. It's going to be all week.
Yeah. Wednesday, you start feeling normal. Thursday, it's like, right.
You're out again, and it was like that for 15 years. Constant. I don't think I missed a weekend, and that's no lie.
And in that time, so were you like predominantly single during that time, or were you in relationships, or one relationship, or were you kind of having fun partying with?
Yeah, I was in a relationship 10 years. 10-year relationship. That was quite strained. It was quite. It was quite an abusive relationship, actually.
Right.
So I had the raving and that at the same time. So at the end of it, you can kind of imagine the effect it kind of has on you.
Do you think that's hand in hand because of the chaos of raving and the drink and the drugs and the no sleep? Is that, or is it just a personality thing?
I think you just get lost in it. You just think it's normal.
Yeah.
I did get my job at BT, probably about, I think, 5 or 6 years into being in the rave scene. And that's when I started looking around, because there was a lot of people worked there. There was a lot of young people like me at the time as well, who went out partying. I'm not sure if they did it to the extreme I did. But looking around, just seeing other lives. There was such a mixture of lives in there. And then I realised that the life I was living wasn't normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still managed to kind of keep my job.
Function.
And I've got a beautiful house now. And so, I've still got things in life. But yeah.
So, with hindsight, you look back, you can see the yoga was the pivotal turning point, and then obviously that leads to the book, and that leads to you just the mind opening and like you're just flooding in. That's obviously a feeling in you that's, you know, you've managed to manifest it out and get things happening. But do you think that with yoga, it's not just obviously, like I always call it like MOT in your body. It's like you take your body to the God garage and you just give it all of the necessary movement and waking it up, but also it's the whole lifestyle of yoga, the thought process, the philosophy of like knowing that your body's like an instrument, and if it's in tune with your mind. And
well, you've got the 8 limbs of yoga. The physical part of yoga is the 3rd limb. So prior to that, you've got niyama and yama, and I can't remember off the top of my head which one's 1 and 2. But one's like your internal discipline and your external discipline. So there's a whole range of things that come within that. You've got the physical asanas, then you've got breath that comes after that, meditation comes after that. But with the physical asanas, going back to that, when you're in one of the asanas, because you do yoga, don't you?
Yes, I was doing up until this lockdown.
Oh, yeah. So do you understand what the postures do when you're in the posture? When you're coming out of the posture, of what that does to your body?
Very rudimentary understanding, but is it to do with like your central nervous system and things, and kind of releasing flow in your? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean it works on everything anyway. But when you're in a posture like triangle pose, Trikonasana, that'll restrict blood flow and oxygen from certain areas of your body.
Okay.
Say, for example, your shoulder, and when you come out of that posture, the fresh blood flow and oxygen flushes through to that area of the body. So if there's any like disease or anything setting in there, it flushes it away.
Wow.
So it keeps the body free from disease.
Oh.
So it's with the yoga postures, you're opening the body, you're keeping the body open.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And that there's a thing I do, cryotherapy, which is kind of a similar thing with the blood, I guess. I'm not sure if it's actually scientifically similar, but what that does is it's kind of it's that cold in there that it shocks your blood into your main organs.
Yeah.
Like your body literally goes, oh, hang on a minute, we're on the edge of shutdown here. So your blood all goes to your major organs to kind of protect yourself.
Yeah.
And then, again, rudimentary for me to try and explain it, but as you heat back up to body temperature, that blood circulates again and it kind of pushes out.
Yeah, well, it will be.
And sort of flushes out.
Yeah,
you know,
so it'll be very, very
dead
similar.
and weak cells and stuff like that, and kind of rejuvenates. It's almost like having your blood spun or something.
Yeah. And in the yoga that I teach as well, there's billions of different yoga postures, but I put the different sequence of postures together for different ailments.
Oh, so
So if there's a different ailment like depression, anxiety, or something even a little bit worse than that, there is a sequence that I can put together which is for that.
That's
ailment.
amazing.
Yeah.
So at what point did you take your own personal sort of practice in, and sort of were you sort of bringing friends in? Did you say, look, come, I can help you out and you can do yoga with me? Or did you just decide one day, right, I'm going to go and sort of try and share this?
Yeah, it's coming back to when I couldn't find a yoga teacher again, because all yoga teachers are different. And, if anyone's going to try yoga and they try a teacher and they think, oh, it's not for me, then don't stop there.
Yeah,
because
don't write
they're all
yoga off.
completely
It's just not
different.
the right relationship.
So when these yoga teachers went back to America and I couldn't find another yoga teacher, found Alwyn, and she led me on what to do so I could get onto her training. And she also told me to find a certain kind of teacher, which the nearest one I found was Nottingham. So at the time, I travelled over to Nottingham once a week for about 5 years. But then I trained in Manchester with Alwyn as well, maybe about three or so times a year. Wow. And once I was qualified, I then taught. I taught at the university first. And the first class I ever taught, I just remember I didn't realise how many people was going to be there. And it was awful.
How many people, Lynn?
50.
Fucking hell.
My very first class. It was all students at the uni.
And were they people who, are they regular, or was it a bit of everything, first timers? And
yeah, there was a mixture of them. I mean, back in Lincoln, 20 years ago, all this was still a little bit taboo, wasn't it? The yoga and things like that. So yeah, I taught there for about 5 years, and then I stopped teaching for a while. I can't remember now why, but I've been in and out of it. Always practiced it. I've taught at loads of different locations in Lincoln. The place that I teach at now, I mean, I've got a log cabin in my garden at the moment. I teach from there.
Yeah, I follow that. Yeah.
But I do a class in Highcombe, and this is the first time in the whole time that I've been teaching that I've found a venue that I actually feel a good vibe in.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because as you mentioned,
apart from my cabin, obviously.
Yeah, well, which is your... Because I found that to be really important, because I tried a Pilates class, I should say, a long time ago with an ex-partner. And we went there, and it was like in a sports hall, you know, and the lady was really cool, and it was kind of... in the little bits that I've read, I understood it to be like quite a spiritual endeavour, you know, when you start sort of breathing and using your body. And I couldn't help but think, because I was in this sports hall, I was like looking around at like the notice board, you know, with like, you know, cleaner wanted and that.
Yeah.
And I was a bit
so
like...
you wasn't really getting the vibe then, was you?
Yeah. And then when I started
it's internal, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
totally,
rather than external.
And when I went to hot pod yoga, which sadly, so sorry to say it, is shut down now because of this, the impact. Yeah, I mean... Yeah, the Lincoln branch is
because
like...
I do follow those actually, and there was doing some online classes, wasn't
That's
there?
right, and they were tricky. I mean, it's difficult.
I thought they was doing.
It's difficult. I mean, but the actual pod itself, coming back to environment and even coming back to you saying like in Lincoln, we're a little bit slow on the take up, you know, and in there because it's quite dark. So the pod for people listening who haven't been or don't understand it, it's literally, it's almost like it's like a bouncy castle.
Yeah, I've seen them.
But with a lid on, you know, it's like a womb almost.
Yeah.
You know, and you walk. In fact, if you've seen this program, the Midnight Gospel, he puts his head in this sort of almost vaginal like foot, and that's like the gateway into. It's like the womb. It's like a vaginal. It's like you go inside, and it's all dark black with kind of efflorescent purple sort of. Bottom layer, which kind of lets natural light in underneath.
Yeah.
And it's very dark, and they've got the heat in there, obviously 37 degrees on the humidifiers. But it's quite private. And there's only like 20, I think, is a full class.
Yeah.
And it's really quite private, and they've got obviously the nice music on and the oil burning and stuff like that. And the environment, it was like going in. It was like a little world, and I found that massively for me personally. That was like, oh wow, yeah. And I'd come out. Like, oh wow, like, I have come from like a special place. Yeah. And now I'm back in the world, and I really enjoyed that.
It's just nice to have that, the vibe.
Yeah.
You probably you quite obviously into visuals.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, so that's probably got a lot to do with that as well.
Totally,
You see, it's obviously going to affect how you feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I love all that. Hence this crazy visual.
It's like Bikram, isn't it? Hot yoga. I've not tried it. I used to want to try Bikram, but I never got around to it.
Have you seen his documentary on Netflix? What did you make of that?
Well, years and years ago, I wanted to try Bikram, and never really got round to it. Then I looked for it again, and then I couldn't find Bikram anywhere. And I thought, what's happened? Then hot yoga started popping up. Yeah. So I was thinking, well, where's Bikram gone? And I thought there was definitely one in Leicester. But now there's
I didn't know that.
there was, quite a few years ago. It was a long time ago. Anyway, I kind of thought, it was at the back of my mind thinking, oh, what's gone on there then? Didn't think anything else of it. I come across that documentary which completely explained it.
Yeah. He went on the run, didn't he? He was on his toes.
He's set up somewhere else, hasn't he?
Did he go to
Mexico or somewhere?
Mexico somewhere, yeah.
So that obviously is why I couldn't find them.
How he got out of town, like, I don't know how he managed it. I mean, it was weird because I'm always quite conflicted with those. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's difficult to make a judgment from a documentary because you don't know what the agenda is and who's made it and where it's come from and what have you. But he's somebody who, like all these guys, they start out with this genuine passion and love for what they do, and then that fucking power comes with it. You know, the crowds grow and the sort of the worship and the
because the people just do worship them. They've
literally
got their lives in his hands.
But what about his classes? Like, there's what, fucking 300 people. He's got like a Madonna mic on, hasn't he? And he's in there. I
mean, a lot of them, I don't know about him, but other yoga teachers who were at that level, they usually have other people walking around. So you'd be at the front with that amount of people, but there would be other people
sort of adjusting and sort of following up
on the postures, because you can't really give.
Oh God, yeah. I mean,
what you need to give to a class being that big.
No, it becomes more of almost like a show, isn't it?
Well, it didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, people should check that out if you've not seen the Bikram. I think it's on Netflix, is it?
I think that's where I see it, yeah. I don't know if it's still on there.
Fascinating.
Quite a while ago.
Well, I'd watched it not long after I watched Wild Wild Country. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh,
I
Lynsey.
don't think so.
Well, I won't spoil it for anybody, but it's a 6-parter. Fascinating. I knew nothing about this. This happened in, I think, the 80s. Bhagwan. Again, an Indian kind of wise man. Great kind of philosophy and all about.
I've seen that.
But it's a similar thing happens, but it's a 6-parter. But it's all about, the whole mindset is like creating I guess a utopia, with mindfulness, people, spiritually aware and polyamorous and kind of the whole kind of, and they actually went, I think, to Oregon. I think it was Oregon. Wild, wild country. Yeah, there we go. Look, I think they went to Oregon and they literally created their own city. They had their own police force, their own everything. I think they all
That's
wore.
crazy.
I think they all famously wore like red or orange or something. But what I found fascinating about it, we've kind of digressed a bit here, but it's on that track of the whole kind of godlike power thing, was how many people back then that they managed to find, that kind of left field, and managed to congregate them and get them together and go that far out. I mean, they literally went and built their own world. Like the land, everything.
Do you know, I think I've seen that.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah, I think I have seen that actually now.
I thought it was fascinating. I mean, look, fascinating.
If it's not that, I've seen something very similar to that.
Yeah, check it out if you haven't, because I think you'd really enjoy it. Because actually, a lot of the principles and what they're trying to achieve, but it's always the same old story, like the Bikram thing. Like that power seems to.
I do think I have actually seen that.
It just seems to just fucking become too much.
I think there's a lot as well. I mean, I've read quite a few things about retreats and things like that.
Just become like cult-like.
It's become cult-like, but it's also vulnerable girls, going on their own places and things like that. And I read a story in one yoga book about Yoga Magazine. It was about a girl that had gone on a retreat on an island somewhere and she couldn't get off. So she's basically stuck with this guy running this retreat, and he was, a weirdo.
Jeffrey Epstein, was it?
No. But yeah, so I think it comes with everything like that, though, isn't it?
Totally. I think even if you run whatever, you become the chief of Facebook.
And it's
like
a strange
music,
thing. Because it's so close to your soul, and you really want it, and it's the same with the health and well-being. It just gets people's vulnerability, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It does. It plays on all of those. Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky. I mean, I've had some great teachers, and I've not been any scrapes like that. So I've been.
Have you had anything in your classes where people have been, too forward with you, even the other way around? No. Because sometimes I'm a guy and guys can be creepy.
Yeah.
Hopefully not me, but they can be. And you get guys turn up, because it's going to be full of women, and
Yeah. No.
No, good on you.
I'd hear that. And I don't think I've had a massive amount of males in my classes.
Have you not?
Honest. No.
Well, they might be having me in there now, because I've got, nowhere to go, and I like the sound of what you're doing.
Well, it's great because I wasn't really looking for another big class. I was happy with my cabin,
And how many, what's a cabin kind of class like?
The cabin, I only take up to a group of 4 in there. Yeah. So it's usually groups that come to me and one-to-ones. So, yeah, the class, because I'd been away and everything, you see. So I did do a class at the university, but I gave that up just before I went away. This is the second time round. I taught the staff not so long back. And, this girl rang me just out of the blue and said, I'm going to live in an eco village in Scotland. She said, would you like to take over my classes? And I said, well, I'm not really looking for a big class, to be honest. I said, but, because it's come on my path, I'll come down and see what's going on.
See what's happening, yeah.
So I went down, and just the vibe of that room, there's something about it. And her as well. I mean, I think she was an ex-dancer. She was a young girl. And she had a good thing going on there. She did 2 classes back to back. And I'd never heard of her before. No. And, the room was just, she had the music right, the vibe was right.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to take this class over because I just loved the place.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Nice. And I've been teaching there for about a year, but obviously with all this going on.
Yeah, how's that affecting? Because that's such a difficult thing.
I've got no work at all.
Right.
Because obviously I'm in the music industry and I'm in the wellbeing industry.
Yeah, so you can't touch people and you can't be with people.
That's all completely gone. And
excuse me, Lynsey.
You've got a Zoom and everything like that, but it's not the same. All I've been doing really at the moment is just doing the videos to keep people, keep them, what's the word?
Connected.
Going.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple of groups that I've taught who come together as friends. They've stuck with the Zoom. And the open class I was doing was kind of hit and miss. So I've just kind of thought at the minute, I've just took a step back. And I am creating quite a few things in the background. But obviously, I'm not going to talk about them yet, because sometimes when you're manifesting something, if you talk about it, it stops.
Yeah, you can kind of just,
So it's best to when you're manifesting, it's best to kind of keep it. But I've got quite a lot I've been doing in the background while all this has been going on, both musically and health. So I'm looking forward to all that coming out. But I've just been staying connected with my students, and then just bringing these videos out just to keep them going with something to do.
How have you found this time then? I mean, it's the conversation that, I think everybody's fed up of having, but it's such an poignant and interesting conversation to have with different people. It's like, what's the impact been like for you? Obviously, you're in a position where you work for yourself, so it can be scary, because where does the money come from and all those things? So how has it been? Have you enjoyed the time? Obviously, you mentioned your son's grown up there.
Yeah,
now.
He's 21. He's still at home though.
Right.
So all of us in my house are self-employed. Me and Joss are both in the music industry, obviously together. So when it first happened, it was like, shit, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of anxiety at first, but then I just thought, things happen for a reason. I'd wanted to get so much stuff online for the last 4 years. And I just thought, now you've got to do it. So it actually gave me a kick up the arse to get things done, which I've been wanting to get done for a long time. So it hasn't been all bad for me, because it's made me move in a different direction.
Yeah, just pivot.
But
and get those things done.
we haven't got anything. But we're managing. We've had to go on universal credit, so we're getting support. And we're managing, and I don't know how. So now when I've got all that sorted out at the beginning, I've kind of now just got on with my creating, really.
Were you saying there, you're managing but you don't know how? That part of the conversation I've had with lots of people.
Yeah, well, I've been meditating on abundance and everything you do, and just staying positive. You've got to stay positive. I mean, when I took the leap coming out of the corporate world into doing what I'm doing, I knew that, all this law of attraction I've been into for years and years and years. Now it's,
now's the time.
Now I'm going to put it into, let's see if it works or not.
Yeah.
And it does.
Well, it's a positive attitude, isn't it? I mean, that's how I understand it anyway.
And I feel like I know I'm being looked after.
Totally. Because you trust in yourself, you trust in your truth, you're prepared to do whatever's necessary needs done.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you just said there with that yoga class, I'm not really fancy it, but you know what, I'm going to poke my head in. You poke your head in and guess what do you find? You find a cool vibe, and actually, if you'd have gone with that, that initial thought of no, then you miss out on something.
Yeah.
We can always open doors and walk back out, can't we?
Yeah.
But if you never open them, you never know.
Well, I just thought, I'm like that with everything. If something just comes on my plate like that, you've got to look at it.
Yeah.
And also as well, when you were saying about the lost souls and everything at the beginning, I think sometimes you've got to realise if something is a struggle, it's not the right thing, because it shouldn't. When you'll find when you're doing things like you said with the business that you started, the Adept, is it Adept?
That's it.
It just flows, and you always know that that's when you're on the right path, because everything just opens up. I mean, I was playing bass for 8 years. I, playing around the pubs, things like that. I started singing within a year. I had the opportunity to go to New Zealand on the cruise ships, and so it just.
And did you do that?
Yeah. Went to New Zealand.
Oh, well, we'll have
on
to
Princess
get into
cruise ships, yeah.
And how was that?
It was a good experience. It's something that I couldn't do. I was going to be doing it for a very long time. And because I'm quite a spiritual person, that was completely in the physical world.
And confined.
I felt completely disconnected from spirituality.
Really?
Yeah, it was like military full on. And because it was Princess cruise ships, they're quite high standard.
Yeah.
It's just full on, 24/7. It was too much. The travelling and everything was fantastic. I probably would do it again, but I wouldn't have been able to do it continuously.
So for listeners,
it's not for me.
As I think I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you were playing with a band, a successful band that did a lot of stuff, and you were kind of learning on the hop in the beginning. You were but you were eating it up, and like you say, you were singing.
I went straight into gigging, didn't I?
Yeah, you was just full on. It was really inspiring. So what happens with the opportunity? How does that opportunity come, and what happens with that band? And are you kind of like, does that band have to split because you're going, or was it kind of...
there was the Tarantinos, before Tarantinos, wasn't it?
So for people, they used to do the Tarantino soundtrack music and used to wear all the gear, and like, it was fucking fantastic.
Yeah, it was good. Do you know,
in fact, my wife, I took my wife to your gig. That was the first date we ever went on proper.
She came back with her mum once, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's right,
I think it was round when it was kind of coming to an end. Yeah. But the members changed that much, and I think sometimes
it's tiring, isn't it?
Yeah, you lose
the third time you're rehearsing all those songs again just to get them up and running.
And I wanted to sing, and as soon as the opportunity to sing come along, that was it. I haven't played the bass for...
Have you not?
3, no.
Right.
Tell a lie. I did pick up the other week because I thought, may as well pick up a bit while I've got time. And I've tried to put the singing and the bass together. But the thing is, when I'm singing, I like to perform. I like to move. Whereas when I've got the bass on me and trying to sing, it just restricts me too much.
So the Tarantinos sort of come into the end, lots of interchanging of members and stuff, and then you get an opportunity. How does that come around?
So Tarantinos, I can't remember that. Oh, yeah, so the singing, I was asked to do an ABBA tribute. So I'd been kind of dipping my toe in singing for quite a while, but not really getting anywhere. And I was like, really? I can't sing. So I trained for it, found myself a teacher, trained just for that.
So when you say you can't sing, because lots of people say this.
I can sing.
But lots of people say flatly, I can't sing.
You can train to sing.
I train to sing, and I don't listen. I can't. I'm not a singer now, but I had a couple of lessons. 2 lessons I had, and I learned a couple of things that fundamentally stayed with me.
Yeah.
That I carried on using, and really what it is just keeping going at it and believing, and then before you know it, something stays in a reasonable.
Yeah, I do believe.
Tune.
I do believe the feeling I get. It's definitely what I'm meant to be doing. Definitely.
Oh, that's powerful then.
Yeah, it's back. I remember it even as a child. Yeah, and it's something I've always wanted to do. But even before I picked the bass up, I started to play guitar and sing. But I got frustrated because I just couldn't get the hang of the rhythm. And I kept saying to my cousin, I think I should be a lead guitarist. Because I said, I just can't get the hang of it. And he just said, try that. And they gave me the bass. So that took me off singing again.
Right.
There was several occasions where I was took away from singing. But then this time, obviously, I trained and I did the ABBA tribute.
So what was training like? How did you go about it? Did you found a teacher again and went from that journey and kind of
found a
connected
teacher,
with somebody?
Independent teacher. And I get she's good friends. I'm good friends with her now as well. And lovely lady. And all I did is just said, this is what I need. I need to do this to be in this. Can you take me there? And she took me there. And
was there periods of it being frustrating learning, or were you?
It's been the biggest challenge, and it's been an emotional roller coaster. And to be up the front in a band instead of at the back with a bass, is completely different. Because I remember being at like gigs that were hard work and thinking, how are they coping up front? Because it's bad enough here at the back, but they've got to be there, facing it all. And I used to think, oh, please, I'm not at the front. But it just feels natural now that I'm up there. But it has been a massive growth. It's...
Was there a specific point where you thought, fucking hell, I've got it. Did you go from kind of like, to, or was it kind of quite smooth, or? I
think I'm still on the slope.
That's the attitude. That's the attitude, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still, and it's been a long. I mean, when I got the audition to go on the Princess Cruise, I couldn't believe it. The guys came over from California, auditioned us in Manchester. I'd only been singing for a year, just over a year, I think it was, and I got on with them great. And I was walking through the rehearsal hallways and things, and bumped into a couple of guys. Didn't realise it was them. And I think they was testing me as well, because there was because obviously you're going to meet people on the ship and have to, but I got on with them great, so that was brilliant. But yeah, I couldn't believe when I passed the audition. It was unreal. They flew us out to New Zealand and went around New Zealand twice. Went over to Australia.
So
food, accommodation.
So when you get the call or you get the meeting or whatever, and you've got the gig. So do you know the other band members? And is it like this is a year contract signed here, or is it how's it all for? We'd
never met the other band members before. We found them through other people that we knew or worked with before. We had problems with the bass player because we had a couple and they kept dropping out kind of last minute. So it was tough getting the bass player in. So, yeah, all of us, we'd never really met each other before, apart from me and Joss. And, kind of just went over there together. And there was all session musicians, guys that we went over there with.
Did you... Being in bands in the past with friends locally, could you feel a difference in the kind of how tight and how professional and things? Or was it just a different vibe altogether?
It's a different vibe. Yeah. Yeah, it's like out in the big wild world kind of feeling.
Yeah. But what a feeling to be like, paying the bills, doing music.
Yeah.
But then I guess there's a point for you where you start to feel like you say you're in a kind of, spiritual Lynsey, and then you're on the clock. Everything's clock, and you're in your cabin and back out your cabin.
That time, and I'm free spirit. So it was.
So how long did you do that for?
A month. Right. Yeah. And then we was meant to be going back. To be honest, we was meant the ship that's still stuck in Miami, I think, with people on it.
Right.
We was actually meant to be going on that ship. I don't know if it's Diamond Princess or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, we was meant to be going over to America, actually on that ship.
Oh wow.
But yeah, it's definitely not the life.
So when you get back from that, then what do you do at that point? Are you still pursuing the singing, or where does the Reiki? What happens? How do you?
Reiki that came in not long after I'd found yoga, but I just kept hearing Reiki. Yeah. You know how you do if you're being pulled towards something, everything seems to be. It was there all the time, isn't it? So I got into Reiki not long after the yoga, and people really thought I'd lost my head then, because again, 20 years ago in Lincoln,
you start talking about chakras, and
I think they really did think that because it was just energy.
Lindsay's madder now than when she was a raver.
But I mean, I still use Reiki daily on myself. If people contact me for a session, then I'll do a session.
Yep.
It's not something I kind of really go out there and promote, because I think when you do quite a few different things, it's hard to promote them all, isn't it? But I was really into Reiki for quite, I still, even when I go to sleep at night, I use it.
Right.
And
what about your boy? Does he pick up on all this stuff?
He's not interested in it at all.
No. Really?
No, not at all.
Does
he thinks I'm weird.
Does he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it is, it's one of those.
I tried to get him into yoga the other week, but no, he's not having it.
No.
He frustrates me, actually, because his diet is terrible.
Right.
Doesn't really do much exercise, footballing and what have you.
And you're
so
young,
you can
and
imagine with me being the way but he's partying the way I was at his age.
Right.
And
you kind of can't really say too much either, can you, I guess? Because
well, it does my head in, because I just think you're creative inside, and I can see that. He can't.
Right.
And I can see he's very much like me. And I just keep thinking, I wish something would just grab him, But you can't. It's his life. He's got to do whatever he's going to do.
How old were you when that happened?
26 before I stopped.
Yeah, so you're.
So I wasn't.
So he's on the right side of the clock, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I tell you what, I don't think he's not. He's not as bad as I was. Definitely not.
Yeah, well, he's already in front then, isn't he?
Yeah.
He just needs a little bit of time.
So I do try and talk to him about things, and I try and keep my eye on him. But he's extremely clever. He's very
have you
wise
caught him
and
with the
cocked on.
Eckhart Tolle sort of having a quick nosy yet? Or no?
No. I try now and again. I try with little bits and bobs, but he doesn't have any of it.
See, my kids, bless them, they get hammered with all sorts of stuff that's way beyond what they should even be considering.
Yeah. Well, I was like that a little bit with
terrible.
Cam, and I reckon that's why Cam's gone the way he's gone.
Yeah, I need to be careful of it. My wife often says, she's like, "Look, chill out."
I think that's why Cam's gone opposite, and that's why he doesn't listen to me. Because I got into it obviously when he was born.
Yeah.
So me growing, I've kind of been into him, I remember buying him a Bible, actually, when he was little, my first Bible. And I remember him telling me this story out of it one day, and I didn't know what he was talking about. And but then I was speaking to this guy at work, and he mentioned something. I said, "Do you know what, my son was talking about that the other day?" So he'd obviously been reading it. Yeah. And, I was getting him into all this. And then he was at school one day. I picked him up from school, and he said, everyone asked, if people believed in Father Christmas and if they believed in God. And Cam was the only one who put his hand up. So that's what you've got to be careful with stuff like that. Yeah. It's...
yeah, we've had that.
And from that day, all the work I'd put into him, that teacher took it away. in 1 minute.
Wow.
Yeah, I was really peed off because I got him on a level of thinking there's something more.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And they took it away in 1 minute. And it is,
That's a big fear for me when my kids are little, 6 and 5 and not quite 3. And I've got a stepdaughter she'll be 20 this month, and she's just been with us for a few days recently, and she's like she's open-minded and pursuing, wider perspective and things like that. And it's really nice. And she rings me up and she wants to talk about racism and inequality and and culture and what we're doing to the world, and it's really nice.
Yeah.
But with my boys and the younger ones, I do worry that when they get into the big school, more the big school, just peer pressure and the playground and just the tidal wave of the strong overriding culture can just.
And if you don't fit into that box,
yes,
then
so you start to relinquish things that are really because it's difficult to kind of keep them up. And then that goes on for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and then you kind of get a bit confused about where you're at after.
Yeah, I had quite a lot of hassle with Cam at high school,
right?
And I do think if they've got any kind of character or they're different in any way, then they're not interested. They want you in that box and doing what they want you to do, and it's hard work. Yeah,
I was unfortunately guilty of being I was probably one of the guys that was putting peer pressure on people a lot of the time, and I had it as well. What I did have, being in music and stuff, and being from where I was from, up on the top end of town, and going to a school on an estate. Football. Everyone's football and fighting. Lads are,
Everything is football. We can.
Yeah, and I was good at football, good enough, so that gives you a bit of kudos. But I was obviously always into music and a little bit different, and and I'd wear. Me old granddad's old sheepskin, like John Motson coat and stuff, and be like, but me football kind of, my football reputation kind of gave me a little bit of leeway for my musical kind of creative, weird, geeky bit to come out.
But it's good that you had the music though, isn't it? It's like, that's what worries me with Cameron. He hasn't found that thing. And I think when you find that thing, that's what kind of
empowers you. Yeah.
In a way as well.
Because that passion's strong, isn't it? That belief that like, oh no, this is giving me something. I feel something from it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you just get herded along, and if anything, you've got a feeling that it's not quite right, but you can't kind of turn back. It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's tricky. So when we come back to where we are now, in terms of we're in the lockdown.
Yeah.
And you've kind of made peace with the fact that, like, okay, I'm going to step back and look at it, and like, you've been using your time to get stuff online.
Create, yeah.
So that's quite a difficult thing to do, because getting stuff online sounds like, oh, get stuff online, but then you've got to learn all these fucking apps and software and use this thing to get the artwork, to put it on that, to then put it in this to render it. But
it's like the videos that I've done. I think the first one was a bit fiddly, but then. Within probably doing them over the matter of about 2 or 3 weeks, you can already see a difference in them. And the majority of this stuff I have done myself. My partner's helped me with a few bits and bobs, but I've been quite surprised of what I've been able to do.
And so for people watching, people listening, so these are bits on your Instagram and stuff. You got a YouTube page?
Yeah, I just started the YouTube page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been similar. I've been obviously trying to get this thing kicking along. I mean, we were just doing audio podcasts before, which is a fucking lot easier. I can tell you that much. You just record it,
took much notice
and put it up. Yeah, but now it's video, and powerful producer Aidan is a godsend, because he does everything on the fly. Because the first few I did like this with 3-point cameras, I was editing it after the fact, like with 3 individual films. You do an hour and a half, 2 hours.
I think it's good if you can to delegate.
Yeah.
Because you can't do everything yourself. I mean, what I've done at the moment is I've just got by. But as soon as all this is over, and if things grow, as soon as I can, I'll be getting people in to do.
And the right
delegate.
people as well. Like Aidan's got I love, Timothy Leary always said, remain around the young people, and sort of learn from them.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up in thinking that, you're the one doing all the teaching. And I love that. And young Aidan being around is awesome. He's got great ideas, super intelligent, super creative, and he's forthcoming as well. You don't keep it all in and be a bit shy, if he's got an idea, throw it out
That's
there.
good.
And so him coming in has enabled us to sort of for me it was kind of take the positives out of it, being with the family, found a way to survive.
Has this started since that, or was it before?
No, I started, the first podcast went out the very end of July. I think the 27th of July was like the first podcast. And I'd been recording them for a couple of months prior to that. And I'd been, again, like you, just really wanted to do a podcast. I actually did my first one in 2012. Which had this theme music that's on this music now. And it was called the Primate Movement, and it was with my brother. And they were in Thailand, and we did we went in pretty heavy for our first podcast. We did a proper Skype fucking across continents podcast. I've got it somewhere, and I'll probably do something with it one day. But back then, although I was well into music and had all my musical set up, podcasting seemed a little bit more tricky to try and do. I wasn't so au fait with things like, uploading to iTunes and this whole kind of thing. And I was busy with the band and having my kids and stuff like that. So I kind of didn't pursue it, but I was absolutely smitten with the education I was receiving from listening to podcasts. Podcasts kind of took it.
My son is really into podcasts.
Well, that's great news then, because
really into podcasts.
Amongst all of that stuff he's listening to, whether it's the silly, funny stuff, or there'll be stuff in there that comes from.
But he'll be.
There's not this corporate put the telly on adverts, agenda-driven, demographic-driven kind of, shoehorning ideas into people's heads. He's seeking out things that are interesting him.
I think when he finds something, he's going to be very good at it.
He's biding his time, isn't he?
Yeah, hopefully he is.
But yeah, this thing is I love it. Like you, having done bands and music and being creative, and I started to find that when I started to do little things like the logo and doing the artwork and things like that, there's a real creative outlet there.
Yeah, I started writing music because I've always done cover bands, but I started writing music last year, lyrics and melodies. And it's just really natural.
Excellent.
And I can honestly say, I feel as if it's probably the happiest I've been. It's just brought something else out, because that's another thing I've been doing since the pandemic as well. We've written a couple more songs because our first video was all booked for the 1st of April.
Was that with 40 Miles West?
Yes.
Yeah,
Danny.
Big shout.
And absolutely gutted. The venue was amazing. Everything was amazing. Oh, it was going to be fantastic. So I've had to postpone it. So our music probably would have been coming out around now. Or
so what are you doing? Are you doing like an EP, Lynsey? What's it going to be? Is it kind of 2, 3, 5 tracks? We don't know really yet what we're gonna do. I would like to get some music out as soon as possible without the video now, and then bring the video in, because realistically, I don't think the video is going to be done for quite a while, with everything going on and the venue that we was using and things like that. So we don't know exactly. We've got to decide on which way we're going to go around that. Yeah. So it's exciting then. So
it's a learning curve for me. I mean, it's new. I've never done an original project before.
Well, that's what I get from you, and saying to Aidan before he came, when he was asking who was in tonight, I was explaining sort of my history of knowing you, and like I've always been really intrigued from afar by people who kind of just continue to grow and develop.
Oh yeah, with a self-actualized person, it's their basic need.
Yeah, because coming back to the party thing, and in our little town, little city. I know it's amazing. It's difficult. It's difficult to kind of shed your skin and move on a bit. And
it is. And I think really over the years, I've still had that kind of like, I'm not really going to fit in there anymore if I do that. But then I've just gone and done it anyway. But now I feel happy with anything that I do. It doesn't bother me at all. And I know now that I can still be with them. I can still be connected to them, and my family. It's just that sometimes in a bit of a different place. Yeah. But that's all right. Yeah. At first, when I kind of moved away from everything, I had to stay away a bit, because if I didn't, I wasn't strong enough to stay where I was.
People don't understand, do they, what's happening? And
why aren't you having a drink? Why aren't you doing this?
Resentful,
why aren't you that? It's like, well, I don't really want one.
Yeah. And it's just too...
because I've got other things. I don't need that.
And it's hard to explain that, because that level of like understanding is not ready to be...
I love life and I
feeling good and being healthy.
Else. I said to Joss for this pandemic, it was really odd, because a couple of weeks before it actually happened, I said to Joss, I feel a bit weird, funny about going out. And I don't know if I sensed something. And I wasn't going out a lot, and then kind of all this happened. But I thought to myself, I've got everything I need here. We can record whatever we want musically. Apart from we can do the demos. We can't go out and record with the musicians, of course, yet. And I've got all the books that I've ever bought, and I just got everything there, and I just feel so happy with that.
Well, that's a beautiful place to be, and it's where we're all striving towards, just to be
free.
Yeah, not to have all the fucking stuff. I mean, I often on the intros to the audio versions of these podcasts is when I have my little cathartic rants, and I find that more and more. I think this pandemic's shown us that again. Chatting to Aidan before the podcast
There's
about
opportunities in it, isn't there?
wild camping recently, simplifying things.
Oh yeah,
simplifying things.
What's important, what isn't, and at the end of the day, whatever you're left with and whatever you have is what you're meant to have.
Yeah.
And if everything's gone, then maybe that wasn't where you was meant to be.
Totally, and trust.
Even though it's hard.
It's hard to trust that. It's hard to the unknown. Like the Jordan Peterson book, 12 Rules for Life, which I read, that had a big effect on me, and following some of his YouTube stuff, and like everybody, you can't agree with everything, and nothing, but that book had a big impact on me in the sense of like trying to prioritize and take responsibility and not be scared to go into the unknown and give something a try. Yeah. Like I said before, open a door.
It's like new paths, isn't it?
Yeah,
they've never been trod on before.
Exactly.
So it's like, it's normal to feel anxious, but you just got to kind of
let it be that way.
Because
it's that anxiety that if you face it and let it come over you, and you find out that you've got through it and you've conquered it, that's rewarding. That builds character.
Well, it's funny because the closer I've got to my soul, to my true purpose of what I'm meant to be doing, the challenges have got stronger. It's almost as if the closer you get, the more it's trying to keep you away. Yeah. Because the growth, like I say, with the singing over the last couple of years, I've had some really challenging times with that.
Okay.
And it just I feel like I'm kind of there.
Give us an example then.
I don't know. Kind of just with, say, anxiety, for instance, or fear, you'll come across a blockage.
Yeah.
Which is quite intense.
And are you talking like in performance, you're about to do a gig, or you're about to go up in front of some people, or a certain note you're worried about? Or?
No, I think in general, it's a feeling.
General.
Yeah, in general, with just where you are in life. And I don't know, it can feel a bit like you're going through anxiety again. But then, say like a few weeks down the line, you've made this massive growth, and then you've realised it's something else you've pushed through. I find it really hard to explain things like that.
I'm fucking terrible at explaining things, and I'm trying to make a hobby of it. Do you know what I mean?
I feel.
Well, now you're right,
and it's hard to get.
You're writing songs now. You're writing songs, and I wanted to get back to that because you said about the peace or the fulfilling feeling you're getting. I find in writing songs, or even when I'm just ideas that I jot down in my phone or whatever, there's a catharsism because songwriting for me became, at first it was really difficult, and I don't know how, everybody does it in a different way, but I used to sit down and maybe I'd have a set of chords that I liked, sequence or whatever, and then I might have an idea about a title or something, and I would sit down and I'd go, right, it's about this, and I want to try and write based on the thing. These three chords that are grungy or they're rocky or they're whatever, and the titles kind of, that film that I saw or that guy or whatever it was, I try and write the thing there and then about that. And then over time, what I started to learn, when the phones started to have the notes on them and stuff like that, I would just, and I'm terrible. I'm a magpie, I can listen to, you might say something that just, a couple of words, a sentence that might just, I think that there's something profound to me in it or whatever, or something kind of deeper, and I'll just jot that down. And then it might be a documentary I watch, and same thing. They say something or a word or an insight, and then I'll just jot it down, and then I'll make my sort of immediate.
And it's like.
What I found is, Lynsey, is after a while, is like I was doing that. I can't remember. I think I listened to something. I think it was a Morrissey interview or something, and listened to how he'd go into cafes and stuff with a dictaphone, which is probably fucking illegal now. But he would literally just record the ambience of a calf.
Really?
And then he'd go back and he would hear,
Just feel.
and these people's just real life characters just talking about the most everyday things.
Oh, really? That's cool.
And apparently he would sort of turn those down into whatever. But I found that after a while, I sat down one time to pick the guitar up, and I thought, I'm going to do it. I felt the urge to put something together, and I got my phone out and I thought, oh, good, look at my notes. I've got loads of notes. And looking in the notes, and I've got all these different pages of notes, and it's one line, and it's maybe as a little sonnet poem kind of thing that I've put together, and then I'll be like, okay, well, that line's cool. Okay, so I'll just write that line down, and then I'd get the chords and a melody and then before you know it, I go, okay, yeah, well that line's pretty cool, and yeah, that's something to do with that kind of fits. And then what I found was, which is really fucking strange, was these notes might span across 18 months.
Yeah.
But I've pulled a song out of them, right, which I sit back, and obviously it's me, and I'm like, this is quite good. And I sit back and I go, fuck me, how does that make sense? I've got there's just random bits of,
but it's just there.
But it's obviously whatever your frequency is these things that you're plucking out over time are all somehow harnessed in some kind of wider binded thing. And I've written a couple that were like, how has that happened?
I was meditating a couple of weeks ago because I've written a couple of songs since the lockdown, and I was meditating and just had this message to check what I'd already written in a book, in my lyric book. So I went back over some, because it kind of had a message. There was a song in there, looked over it, and there was, but again, it was in different sections, and it's I think it's great.
It's all coming from the same place. That's how I've surmised it to myself. I thought, well, hang on a minute. Like, why is this? At first, it blew me out. I was like, how the fuck is this? How's that happened? And it's happened repeatedly on different songs. And now I understand it to be a process. And what I've boiled it down to is whatever it is, those things that seem profound to me, whatever those things that I'm picking out are, they're all part of whatever my current wandering is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of, in some way or another, and they seem to be binded somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, because all my lyrics are really reflect my teachings. So it's coming from me. You know, it's coming from you, isn't it? It's a message that you're here to give, basically.
Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing this.
I can't wait for it to come out. Yeah,
awesome.
Really excited.
Yeah.
It's quite a mixture of genres as well. It's.
I was going to say, what are you stylistically? What would you? I mean, I hate pigeonholing anything. It's awful, but we're at a point on the
really
musical
diverse.
cycle where
It's like I think we've got about 9 tracks. Musically, we've got about 50, but lyrically, from me, we've got about 9 or 10.
You're in album territory.
There's so much in there. You know, if you had a couple of people, 2 or 3 people sat listening to one track, all 3 people could have a different opinion of where it belongs. And every song is different. And
what kind of instrumentation have you got on there then? Have you got sort of traditional drums and bass and guitars, or are you using synths and electronic stuff?
Well, Joss is, he does the music.
And Joss, your partner?
Yeah. And I do the lyrics and melody. And then we get the session musicians to come in and record with us. So he's doing it on... He's doing the music. I mean, I don't that side. It's
what, like Logic or Pro Tools or one of those.
So
kind
he
of
does theirs, and that'll be the demo, and then obviously we get the session guys in to come and do
drop the
recordings.
records on.
Yeah. But I do want to move a bit more towards a bit of electronic stuff as well, because I love that anyway. Yeah. So yeah, there's still loads of ideas, and it's really great because me and Joss we really we get each other's creative juices going. Like, we really inspire each other, and it just gets a bit kind of...
And have you got a healthy ability to pull back on things as well and say, hang on a minute, I'm not too sure about that?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's really difficult, I've found, in my history of, and I think lots of people do, lots of song creators. When it's flowing, and you're like, fucking hell, brilliant, and I've got that in the melody. But then there's times when someone brings something and you're like...
Is that now?
And it's difficult to say, that's not really where we are, or...
No, we do say...
That's great, and that's one of the healthiest. That's probably what makes it prosper in the end.
But it's like kind of with the music, he's way ahead of me with the music. So I can't really say a lot at the minute. But when I do get all the know-how, I'll be having a bit more of a say.
Well, the journey you're on, the way you're gobbling up, just learning, you know.
I learn very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
I found that again, you know, recognising that in people around me. that just keep learning, keep picking things up and finding the fun and the exploration in things.
Well, it's got to be fun.
It's like a pilgrimage. It's almost like a
playing,
pilgrimage. Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
It's like being a child still. I always say to my students, don't grow up, you know.
Yeah, because that magic is kind of what keeps us. In fact, I think I've just done the intro for the podcast that's going to go out tomorrow night, or Monday, the audio. I had a bit of a rant about exactly that, like having moments with my kids, like just in the fields, because we've been locked down and because we're together and it's beautiful, but you are aware that kids don't see their friends as much, and they're all playing in like a cornfield. And that
must be tough if you've got young children at this time.
Yeah, it is, but we've kind of been really, I mean, we've treated it, as listeners of this podcast know, because I sort of mention it every week, checking in with everybody's all right, and kind of like trying to just give a little insight to what we're doing, and because people, I think, are a little bit disconnected, and you're wondering, like, are we being too cautious? Are we being too, cavalier? And we've kind of carried on a bit like yourself.
You've got to get through however you can get through.
Totally,
that's it.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's got to do.
And try not to be too fearful of like what other people might think, and be respectful of what other people.
You've really got to get through. However you can get through it, that's what you need to do.
Well, watching the kids in the field was just wonderful, because I just had one of those moments, like a message, like I often have, where I can almost be objectively looking in at myself and my kids, and I just saw them playing, and I just had a moment of like thinking, this is like the purest form of being a human.
Yeah,
like they are just creating this game. They're immersed in one another's company. They haven't got the corruption of how the world works and just the necessary mechanics of like survival and economics and all those things, and they're just playing. And like it reminded me, it's like sometimes I can catch myself going, come on, we're going to get off now, come on, and like stopping and mid and all it takes is to go, hang on a minute, they're at the point where they're playing this little thing and they've got a couple of minutes, and embrace them, and actually take it on myself, get involved, let that child come through, let that energy come into you. It's powerful. And not just be rushing it on to, we've got tea or whatever.
When you start taking that journey, you spend all these years gathering all this crap, building all these layers on yourself and having all these problems. But when you actually start the journey, you're actually starting the journey back to yourself. So when you're born with whatever gifts you've got. Whatever's in them will be in them from a child. So when you're going back to who you truly are, you're unraveling all that crap and you're going all the way back to that. So it is playful. It is return to innocence.
And what makes it? Yeah, it is.
I was listening to that the other day, actually, Enigma.
Yeah.
I've not listened to it for years, and I've been doing my yoga practice too, actually, for the last couple of weeks.
Oh, that's powerful.
And I love it. Yeah. So it's Return to Innocence is one of the songs.
Isn't it strange how we kind of, as we move away from that innocence, from that play, from that, essentially that's like all the things that harness creativity, imagination, like the willingness to let yourself go beyond the processing necessities of like life. Well,
that feeling when you're, say, meditating or however you're doing a spiritual practice and you're coming into your soul, that's what people are looking for with drink, with drugs and everything else. But to be able to get that without drinks and drugs, it's amazing.
It's a difficult thing to do.
It's a natural high,
And it's such a fucking bugger that it seems to work on experience and wisdom. And not to say that in any way I have wisdom, but what I do know I have is the experience now to know that when you're searching for the fun, for the unknown,
you've just got to let go, haven't you?
When you're young, it's necessary. We said it at the start. It's necessary to go out and get crazy with your friends and explore the world and work out where the boundaries and the lines are.
Yeah,
it's almost like that's a necessary part of getting to the point where if, like you said, we're lucky enough to get that spark, read that book, meet that person, and move through those stages and not get trapped there. But it's kind of like the balance, the payoff is tricky, because to get to that point where you realise, I don't need to just be out and about or drinking or partying or taking drugs or whatever the buzz is. Actually, if you can get to a point where you're
strong enough to you could still be in those places sometimes, but I used to kind of dip in and out a bit.
Yeah.
I'd go for just a little while rather than staying there for 2 days.
Yes, totally. Me too. Yeah.
I'd go there for a little while and then I'd go because I know I can go home and go to bed, get a good night's sleep, get up the next day and feel good. So you've had both. You've been out, you've seen everybody, you've socialised.
The community.
You've had a couple of drinks, you know, and stopped at that.
Yeah. And then
know,
Sunday morning, you feel good and you're doing something, and you know. That's really important. That's
a really good balance. You know, sometimes you can feel a bit left out if everyone's doing it and you're not.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, if you take this path anyway, people will leave out of your life. There's no doubt about that. Some people won't, some people will. But you'll be at a stage where that doesn't really matter. If they go, they go.
Yeah.
You know, they're obviously not meant to be. They've served the purpose on your path, haven't they? You know.
So. What's the future like then, Lynsey? What can you say at the moment? Obviously, we don't want to risk any, you know, but obviously there's music coming.
Yeah.
You're excited about that.
Yeah.
As far as the yoga and the teachings and the well-being and stuff like that, I guess it's just a case of a society.
I think my teachings are only just beginning, even though I've been teaching for 20 years.
Oh,
that's coming
awesome.
to a whole different level.
Yeah.
So I've never really kind of gave everything I know in my teachings. I've done yoga classes and etc. But I feel as if I'm in a place where I feel I can give everything I've learned now and experienced.
Excellent.
Because I feel like I'm at a place where I know what works, what doesn't work. I've experienced everything that I teach. Because everything that I teach, I've took that path for my own healing.
Yep.
So I think that's great because if you've experienced it, you know kind of what works, what doesn't.
Oh, totally.
Something I did learn actually in the last year. When I used to go through a lot of my healing, like with Reiki, etc., if you're healing from something, sometimes you relive it for 2 or 3 weeks because you're letting go of a blockage, basically. But I learnt there's a different kind of technique, which I won't kind of go into now, but it takes 90 seconds to release a blockage and it's gone.
Is it a breathing?
And all these years, and I said to this lady, it is breathing, and this lady, it's actually, I discovered it through music. I went for some singing lessons in London. Cost me £600 for lessons. But do you know something? It was a massive growth, what I needed, and it's completely brought my singing within.
Well, it's funny you say that, and I won't pick your brains too much, but the things I was referring to about the 2 lessons that I had were breathing. It was 3 breathing exercises that I was taught that all of a sudden just turned my little 1 litre engine into like a 3 litre engine. I just had capacity.
It is to do with breathing, but it's not that kind of breathing.
Right.
It's to do with I kind of won't let it go to, because it might sound a bit kind of really far out there and really, really weird.
Well, we've got far out people.
Me to a whole kind of
and if you
different place.
And what about Josh then? Can you practice stuff with him? Obviously, if your boy's not kind of, you know.
No, he isn't. Josh is into it. He doesn't practice yoga or anything like that. But he is starting to. He kind of learns. I do teach him, and he picks quite a few things up from me. But a lot of the guitarists that he follows are into spirituality, so he's kind of learning through them. Because, like I said to Josh, it takes people understand in different ways.
Yeah,
you know, you could come to me and you might not get it. From me, and
then that can impact other areas of things, can't it, as well?
You know, because a lot of things that I've done it because of the people that are my idols. You know, that's who's kind of got me thinking about it in the first place.
Trying to emulate that kind of.
But he does, you know, he'll come to me with something that he's heard, and then I'll add to it. You know, and I do that with him spiritually, and he does that with me musically.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah,
what a nice bargain payoff that is, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's lovely. So, teaching's going to be really exciting, it sounds like. Yeah. Music's going to be super exciting. Yeah. I can't wait to hear that. You'll have to send us something once you have got something out, and we can link it in, and then we can play something in the future episode. So, I guess we just need this stage of life out the way, so we can all crack on.
Oh, definitely.
Do you think people...
I've got so many plans. I've got a list of things I want to get done, and I'm doing what I can, but there's things that I need to be out there doing them. So.
And how do you see the world, Lynsey, when we get... I don't think anybody really says back to normal now, because I think we kind of accepted...
It's not going to be the same.
So I'm
just waiting to see.
What does it look like? Do you think people have had... Do you think people are angry? Do you think people are numb? Do you think people have learned anything about their lives, about how much they work, about how much time they've got? Or do you think...
I think everyone's learnt something. I think some people have learnt the hard way. And I think if you don't understand the deeper meaning to what's happening, I think you're likely to struggle a lot more. But yeah, I mean, I've heard people like in my family who aren't really into spirituality and things like that. Some of the things they're starting to say, and it's like, I can't believe what, and it's just like nature things, you know, and like, well, they're not people that aren't really into nature usually. And then all of a sudden they're mentioning things about nature.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Isn't it?
So I truly think that everybody has got something. People have made, even if they don't realise, there's been a growth with everybody.
I love hearing that. I love hearing you say that, especially if you've got a good
it's what's happened.
tune for this thing.
You wouldn't be here still if you hadn't.
Do you think it's to do with time? Do you think it's to do with people having time? I keep coming back to the fact, why is it? Is it to do because... I'll tell you what was funny today. Not far from here on the way to the studio, you have to come past McDonald's, right? Well, it must have fucking opened today because the queue, right? It was like you have to turn in off the main road, and then it was right round. I mean, there must have been. I've never seen anything like it.
But it's a shame people are actually dying to get back to how it was because it was chaotic.
My thoughts entirely, right? So we haven't been going to McDonald's, obviously, as a I guess a global thing, right? And I was thinking that was the thought. I mean, I do. I go there now and again. I'm guilty. I'm guilty of grabbing a bag of carrots and
water, and he'll be sat there.
Good on you. Well, you know what you're doing, don't you? But no, I am guilty of dropping.
I can't get away with it at my age anymore. That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I am guilty of dropping in there every now and again and grabbing a breakfast or whatever. But I just found I had that thought as I was just driving past, and I just happened to just peripherally catch like, whoa, what's going on here? And you know. And then I thought to myself, isn't it strange? Because I'll bet you out of those 60 cars I saw in a line, I'll bet a lot of the people in those cars kind of thought at some point during this time, like, oh yeah, this, maybe they didn't think it directly, but like you haven't been there and you've been fine. You've probably been better for it. But then as soon as you get the green light, we you know, we're all... There is
going to be that, isn't there?
Yeah,
we're going to go back to...
I mean, I don't get me wrong. It occurred to me. You know, you see it, and you start thinking, indicate. You know, but I did think, wow, isn't it strange? Because we were fine without it. No one really made too much fuss, and if it never came back, we'd have carried on, and that would have been removed from like this cultural diet.
It's like, the thing is, it's like, you know, it's okay if that's what people want, but why not just have it in moderation? Why can't it just be a little bit more less chaotic? Yeah. Because it's just the world was getting mad. I don't know if you felt it before.
Totally.
I mean, it's
totally.
And I think that's why a couple of weeks before it happened, I couldn't go out because I went out. I live on Rookery Lane. I come out of my house. I go that way. I'm stuck in traffic. I go that way. I'm in traffic. There's just people everywhere.
Yeah, it's a hot spot there, isn't it? For
know, and it's it just felt crazy.
Definitely, I think.
But there's been a transformation with energies anyway, and I think people will take what they've learnt and grow from it, and some people won't. There'll be a separation of that. But there's not going to be happiness with the people who don't learn. I think
a lot of it resides with the governments and the powers, because if they decide, do you know what? Maybe we can shut down the
it is.
elements of how much time we have to spend keeping the system moving. You know, maybe we can go from a 5 or 6 day week into a 4 day week and give people time to live and to be, and then go back into the workplaces instead of going back in after a 60-hour week and knackered and down and like haven't seen their families and that resonating energy that kind of everything just on the wheel. Maybe if you get that little bit of less time and we can work out a way of producing what we need to produce, but like people get back to work on a Monday or a Wednesday or a Saturday or whenever they get back, and they've actually had time, like we've had, to consider nature, to go for a walk, to spend time with nieces, nephews, cousins, whatever the fuck it is. And then you get back to work on a Monday and like, nice one. Ready for this. Like, let's get it done.
It's like having a life of meaning instead of ambition, isn't it? It's all right having a life of ambition, but at the end of the day, when this pandemic's happened, when it really boils down to it, it's about having ambition and being here, being there, having this, having that. But that hasn't meant anything, has it really, in the last few months?
No, because what can you do with it?
But a life of meaning, you haven't really lost anything because you're still.
I love that. What a lovely
still
way.
living in the meaning.
That is a lovely way to bring this home, because that's the feeling I've had is and again I said it to the listeners and the you know the family of Chew the Chat, is like, in the end, being with the people that you care about.
Yeah.
And cultivating community. Just today I went my little kind of gym set up. The friend of ours in the village is military, and they do like personal training, and we do it just as a gang, and we just meet up and do it. You know, at 10 to 6 this morning we were running through the village, just 4 of us, social distancing, but it was just lovely to be together. And it occurred to me again, I had one of those moments again of like, this is really important, just being together with these 3 guys, having a chat in the moment, running through the fucking village with a medicine ball on my shoulder thinking, what am I doing? This is fucking murder.
Actually, no, I've not used one of them for years. I was 18, I used to go down to Denny's gym, and they used to do where you throw them at each other's stomach.
The boxing club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really powerful, isn't it?
It is. The sense of community is lovely, and I I'm with you. Hopefully we carry this into the future.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, Lynsey?
They can find me. I've got my Facebook, Mindful Living with Lynsey.
Yep.
And I've got the YouTube, Mindful Living with Lynsey.
Yep.
Got that on Instagram as well, but I've also got Lynsey Music and Yoga.
Music and Yoga, yeah.
Is it that way around? Because I did change it.
I think it is.
Music, yoga.
But I will link all this in the notes as well.
Because to be honest, I'm kind of all over the place because I don't promote myself as much as I.
No, you said earlier.
Yeah,
you're just doing. You're just doing, aren't you?
I just go wherever life takes me, and there's a lot of people that know me and kind of follow me, and if they want me, I know they know where I am.
I love that. I love that approach. I love the fact that you're just doing what you're doing, and it finds its way. Like you said, things coming into your life.
Things change, It's just like I say. We went off on the cruise. We've come back. Before I did that, I was teaching the staff in the university. I did nutrition plans with them and did all the yoga with them, and then something else comes along, and then something else comes along, and it's been challenging living like that after being used to being in the corporate world for 23 years.
Wow.
And it was challenging changing, but looking back, I've kind of settled a bit now because I just think, well, everything's just always working out. But you have got to you can't just leave something and go and expect that to work. You've got to have
the
a
understanding,
plan,
and the belief and the strength.
Yeah, so it's more the belief and
you're always going to.
You've got to stay positive.
What a message! Lovely. Well, thank you so much for this, Lynsey. It's been awesome.
Thank you for inviting me.
You take care.
Thank you.
Peace.